last week of school yesterday because of this. And I'm not even playing around. I will, even if I'm in my deathbed, I swear to God, I will say it in my deathbed. I did not touch that woman. I did not touch that girl. I didn't lay my hands on that girl. And with that being said, this time around,
the cameras exploded like fireworks when Cardi B walked down those courthouse steps. Flashes bursting in every direction as if the whole world was desperate to catch a single piece of her expression. The air outside was thick, the noise of the crowd rising like a storm, but none of it drowned her out. She didn't wait for silence. She commanded it. Her chin tilted high, exhaustion written across her posture, but her presence was electric, unshakable. This wasn't the image of a celebrity, beaten down by a trial. This was a mother who had sacrificed her children's first day of school, who had lost irreplaceable family moments, and who now carried the bitterness of that loss like fire behind every word. When she opened her mouth, the chaos dimmed. Thanked her lawyers, the jurors, the judge, and even the press who had turned her pain into a spectacle. Yet even in her gratitude, there was steel. It wasn't just thankfulness. It was a warning that she would not crumble, that no lawsuit, no accusation, no courtroom could strip her of her truth. Her voice cracked with fatigue, but it was the kind of crack that carried rage rather than weakness. She told the world, with cameras capturing every syllable, that she had missed milestones she would never get back. Her kids had gone to school without their mother there to hold their hands, and that was something she would not forgive easily. She called the entire ordeal a baseless attack on her name, a desperate grab at fame and money disguised as justice. Then came the words that would echo across social media, the vow that could not be mistaken for performance. She declared, even if she were lying on her deathbed, she would swear the same thing. She did not touch that woman. She did not lay her hands on that girl. The repetition wasn't for emphasis. It was for eternity. A vow meant to live in headlines, hashtags, and history. She wanted her denial burned into the minds of everyone who doubted her. And in that fiery moment, she wasn't just defending herself. She was rewriting the narrative of how celebrities are treated when lies collide with power. The warning was sharp, undeniable, no more settlements, no more treating her like an ATM for anyone bold enough to whisper an accusation. She said it plain. If anyone came for her again with baseless claims, she would countersue, and she would make sure they paid. It was no longer just about protecting her name. It was about setting an example, building a line in the sand for every opportunist who thought fame was a free ticket to payday. Her tone made it clear. She wasn't afraid of courtrooms anymore. She was ready to weaponize them in her defense. The world had seen her dragged into legal battles before, but this time was different. This was war on her own terms, and she was ready to strike back. Even in her rage, Cardi B still attempted to show humanity. She begged her fans not to drag Ellis, not to stalk her family, not to fill social media with hate. She told them not to waste their energy on ugliness, not to call Ellis names or attack her appearance. She wanted this fight to end in the courtroom, not spill into the chaos of Twitter threads and Instagram lives. That plea was surprising to some, but it revealed a contradiction that fueled the drama even more. Because for all her talk of closure, there was still venom in her delivery. She was not a woman who bowed down. She was not going to simply walk away. Her mercy was laced with a threat. Fans could hear it. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about power, about sending a message to anyone thinking they could come for her again. And then she laughed, bitterly, humorless, but still a laugh. She joked about her wigs, about how raw her forehead was from pulling them on and off during the trial. She spoke about the absurdity of trying to balance being a global star, releasing new music, and fighting a lawsuit all at once. She let people peek behind the curtain, revealing the exhaustion, the endless switches from studio lights to courthouse seats, from recording sessions to jury deliberations. In those confessions, fans saw the human beneath the star, the woman stretched thin, but refusing to let either her career or her name collapse under the weight. It was a balancing act most people couldn't imagine, and yet she made it look Like survival, raw and unpolished, but survival nonetheless. When the microphones turned toward Ellis, the air shifted. Her voice was calmer, steadier, but no less sharp. She admitted she was disappointed with the verdict, but insisted she wasn't broken. She spoke of flaws in the justice system, saying she had been swallowed by one of them, but she refused to call herself a victim of silence. She stood tall, insisting she was proud that she came to court, proud that she stood up for herself, proud that she forced Cardi B to look her in the eye. To her, that confrontation was its own victory. She said she had no regrets, no shame, no desire to erase what she had done. She claimed her truth remained her truth, even if the jury refused to validate it. And then came the words that sliced like a knife through the crowd. When asked if she was still a fan of Cardi B, Ellis didn't hesitate. No. She said it plain, like a blade against the air. Asked if she would listen to Cardi's new album releasing in days, she shook her head. Not at all. That declaration turned the moment into a cultural rupture. The fan who once cheered now sworn into opposition. The shift was so stark it became its own drama, the kind of storyline that the internet would feast on. Idol turned enemy. Admiration curdled into resentment. Her lawyer, Ron Rosen, stepped in next, and his voice carried nothing but venom. He called Cardi B unprofessional, mocking her courtroom behavior. He described her body language, her expressions, her gestures, insisting they revealed arrogance and disrespect. He accused her of making a fool of herself before the judge, jurors, and public. He even claimed she had thrown something inside. The courthouse right in front of the media, a gesture he said proved her arrogance knew no limits. To him, it was shameful, humiliating, disgraceful. He framed Ellis as the composed one, the woman who had carried herself with dignity, while Cardi revealed herself as chaotic and disrespectful. But bitterness wasn't his only weapon. He hinted at more to come. He told the press that appeals were already being mapped out, that another jury in another courtroom could see things differently, and that the case was far from over. His tone turned a loss into a battle cry. The war, he promised, had only just begun. What unfolded wasn't just a clash in the courthouse. It became a battle in the streets of public opinion. Fans split instantly into factions. Some praised Cardi B for standing tall, defending herself as a hardworking mother fighting against opportunists. Others sympathized with Ellis, seeing her as the brave fan who dared to confront a star and got crushed by a system too biased to see her pain. The narrative fractured into camps, the hashtags flew, and suddenly the trial wasn't about facts anymore. It was about perception, about loyalty, about which story fans wanted to believe. Clips of Cardi's fiery speech went viral, looped into memes, remixed into beats, shared across timelines. At the same time, Ellis's no became a soundbite of defiance, an anthem of betrayal turned rebellion. The case had left the courtroom. It was now alive in every corner of social media. By the end of that day, the courthouse had closed its doors, but the story had only widened. Inside, the verdict had been clear. Outside, the verdict was chaos. Reporters squeezed every drop from every quote. Bloggers churned headlines out of contradictions. Fans fueled debates in comment sections. It was no longer about who won or lost legally. It was about who looked stronger, who sounded more believable, who carried themselves in a way that swayed hearts and timelines. Cardi B left with a vow to never again bow to baseless lawsuits. Ellis left with a vow to never again admire the woman she once idolized. And the people left with popcorn, ready for the next twist. By the time the dust of the first verdict settled, the battle had already left the courtroom and marched into the streets of opinion, fueled by blogs, live streams, and the endless cycle of gossip. Cardi B had walked out with a victory in her hands, but victory didn't silence the noise. It only made it louder. She flooded her social media with clips of her children, moments in the studio, and candid laughter that felt both authentic and deliberate. She wasn't just living her life. She was curating a narrative, making sure the world saw her as the mother and artist who refused to let a lawsuit stop her shine. She told her fans in posts and stories that she was tired, that her forehead was still raw from the endless wigs, but she wasn't broken. She was gearing up for her album drop, determined to prove that the trial wasn't going to derail her career. And her fans responded in force, filling timelines with her sound bites, turning her defiance into memes and echoing her vow like scripture. I did not touch that woman. But on the other side, Ellis refused to disappear into silence. She took interviews that were sharper than the statements she had given on courthouse steps. She admitted that she had once admired Cardi B, that her music had been the soundtrack of her daily life. But she now saw her as arrogant, disrespectful, unrepentant. She claimed she had never received an apology, never received an ounce of compassion, and that, to her, was the truest proof of who this superstar really was. Every word she spoke deepened the wound between fan and idol, transforming it into a cultural reckoning that even the most dramatic reality TV producer couldn't have scripted. The betrayal of a fan who turned into an enemy became irresistible fuel for blogs and podcasts, the kind of story that was too juicy to fade away. And with each interview, Ellis carved herself into the narrative not as a woman defeated, but as one who refused to be erased. Ron wrote,
conducting herself in court.
I thought it was totally unprofessional. I think it showed value to her character, the type of person that she is. A lot of her body language, her body gestures, her facial expressions, her disrespect for the court, I think speaks to who she is. I think we saw how I conducted myself during this trial, and I think that speaks volume.
Sir, could you say and spell your first name and last name?
Sure. My name is
Rosen, her lawyer, played his role with fury. He told reporters again and again that the verdict was wrong, that the jury had overlooked critical truths, that the system had failed his client. He painted Cardi B as a bully who mocked the courtroom with her body language, her laughter, her alleged outbursts. He repeated the claim that she had thrown something inside the courthouse, a reckless act that, he said, revealed her disrespect for the very process she claimed to respect. He doubled down on the promise of an appeal, telling anyone who would listen that this case was far from finished. His words dripped with rage, but beneath the rage was calculation. He knew that even if Ellis had lost legally, she could win, in the court of public opinion. And every time he spoke, he gave her backbone, shaping her into the woman who dared to stand against fame's machine. The media seized on the clash of images. On one side, a global superstar who positioned herself as a hardworking mother, overworked and exploited, fighting for her children's future. On the other side, a former fan who said she had been dragged through the mud, who insisted she had been painted unfairly but refused to bow down. It became a duel of optics rather than evidence, and in that duel, every detail mattered. Fans dissected body language in videos, slowed down courtroom clips, argued about every gesture and phrase. To some, Cardi B's fiery speech was proof of authenticity, the raw voice of a woman wronged. To others, it was pure performance, the art of a celebrity who thrived on chaos. Meanwhile, Ellis's quiet tone was seen by some as dignity and by others as bitterness. The divide wasn't just messy, it was unstoppable. By midweek, hashtags were already trending. Edits of Cardi B shouting, "I did not touch that woman," were remixed into TikTok dances, while Ellis's "I was a fan but not anymore" spread like wildfire, captioned onto heartbreak memes and used as the soundtrack of betrayal videos. The internet had taken their feud and turned it into culture, and neither woman could control where it went next. Some fans started labeling Ellis as the fan who fought back, while others dismissed her as bitter. Cardi's supporters labeled her as the mother who fought the system, while critics accused her of arrogance. The truth no longer mattered. What mattered was which story fit into the audience's hunger for drama. Inside the music industry, insiders whispered nervously. Some said Cardi B would use the verdict as fuel, spinning the trial into a redemption arc that powered her album sales. Others worried the controversy would stain her rollout, that Ellis's narrative might sway fans and damage her image. But Cardi B didn't seem fazed. She leaned deeper into visibility, showing herself in the studio, showing herself laughing with her family, reminding fans she was more than a headline. She wanted control, and she was going to wrestle it back no matter what. Still, Ellis was relentless. She gave another sit-down interview where she admitted she had been shocked to hear that Cardi B had told fans not to harass her. "That's news to me," she said coldly, claiming she had never received those words directly, never been given even the smallest gesture of grace. To her, it was hollow. A performance for the cameras, not a genuine attempt at peace. The contradiction sparked a new storm. Fans debated whether Cardi B was sincere in her plea, or whether she was simply trying to look gracious while still cutting deep. The uncertainty became its own fuel, igniting debates across platforms, fueling hour-long YouTube breakdowns and endless podcast arguments. The internet thrived on that ambiguity, the space where no one could be sure who was lying and who was telling the truth. Every day, the story grew. By the second week after the verdict, it wasn't about the lawsuit anymore. It was about fame, power, and perception. It was about whether celebrities were easy targets or untouchable giants who crushed anyone who dared to challenge them. Blogs dissected every move, podcasts turned the feud into serial episodes, and fans treated each clip like evidence in a case that had no end. Ellis stood firm, insisting she was proud she dared to take on someone so powerful. Cardi B stood firm, insisting she was proud she didn't give in to exploitation. Neither side was willing to surrender. Neither side was willing to disappear, and then the whispers of the appeal started leaking online. Rumors swirled that transcripts were being reviewed, that new evidence might emerge, that Ellis had a second shot waiting in the shadows. Whether true or not, the speculation was enough to keep the story alive. Fans stayed glued to updates, hungry for the next twist. Because if this case had proven anything, it was that a verdict didn't end the war. It only escalated it to a bigger stage. The courthouse had closed its doors, but the battle for perception was raging louder than any gavel could control. By the end of the second week, it was no longer just Cardi B versus Ellis. It was a symbol, a reflection of every doubt people had about justice and every frustration they carried about celebrity privilege. It was about whether power corrupted or whether power was unfairly targeted. It was about loyalty, who you believed, who you defended, who you canceled. And in that messy storm, one truth became undeniable. The drama was bigger than both women now. It had become cultural currency, and no one was going to let it fade quietly. By the third week, the case had stopped being a legal matter and transformed fully into spectacle. Every headline, every live stream, every podcast breakdown reminded the world that Cardi B and Ellis were no longer just two women tangled in a lawsuit. They were symbols in a culture war. For Cardi B, it was about proving she was more than an ATM, more than a celebrity to be milked by opportunists. For Ellis, it was about refusing to be silenced, about proving that standing against power was a victory in itself. The courthouse, doors had closed, but the battle was alive in living rooms, barbershops, salons, and social feeds. People weren't just watching. They were choosing sides as if loyalty to one woman defined where they stood on justice itself. Cardi B leaned fully into control. She posted videos of her children, laughing and hugging them as if to reclaim the family time she had lost during trial. She posted late-night clips from the studio, raw and unpolished, showing herself bent over notebooks, headphones slipping off her head, sweat dripping down her face. The caption would read, "Still working. Still fighting." It wasn't just content, it was strategy. She was reminding the world that she had sacrificed, that she had balanced fame and motherhood, that her grind was authentic. Every post was a counter-argument to Ellis's narrative, and her fans ate it up, spamming her comments with hearts, fire emojis, and vows to stream her album on release day to show their support. But Ellis refused to fade. She launched her own quiet campaign of interviews, each one sharper than the last. She described the humiliation of being painted as a liar in court, the pain of watching the woman she once idolized laugh off her claims. She said she wasn't angry at the verdict. She was angry at the arrogance. She insisted she had no regrets, that if she had to do it all over again, she would still drag Cardi B into court and force her to face the accusations. Her words carried defiance, but underneath them was heartbreak. The story of a fan-turned-enemy resonated in ways that facts never could. Every time she repeated her, "No, I'm not a fan anymore," the wound reopened, and the internet pounced, turning that simple word into a cultural punchline. The clash reached a new peak when Ron Rosen held another press conference. He accused Cardi B of mocking the system, of laughing at the dignity of the court, of believing her fame made her untouchable. He reminded reporters of his claim that she had thrown something inside the courthouse, insisting it was proof of her recklessness. And then he confirmed what everyone had speculated. An appeal was officially in motion. He promised new eyes, new jurors, new arguments. His words weren't just for the press, they were for Ellis's supporters, the ones who needed fuel to keep believing. He turned a legal loss into the beginning of another battle, feeding the storm that was already too loud to die down. The internet responded instantly. Some called Ellis delusional for not letting go. Others praised her for her persistence, saying it took courage to go against someone as powerful as Cardi B. Fans split even further into camps, hashtags battling for dominance, Twitter threads, dissecting every angle. YouTubers made hour-long breakdowns of body language. TikTok edits looped Cardi B's fiery denials against Ellis's sharp no. The case had become a series of sound bites, each one living longer than the courtroom. Transcripts. It wasn't about who was telling the truth anymore. It was about which version of the story fit best into the hunger for drama. And still, Cardi B pressed forward. Her album rollout turned the trial into marketing fuel. She teased tracks that sampled her courthouse speech, lines about fighting lies, hooks about refusing to be silenced. Fans who supported her rallied even harder, ready to stream, ready to prove their loyalty not just as fans of her music, but as defenders of her truth. For them, buying her album wasn't just about the music, it was about choosing a side in the war. Meanwhile, critics saw the move as arrogance, proof that she thrived on chaos, proof that she had turned someone's pain into profit. Every teaser sparked outrage and loyalty in equal measure, and Cardi B thrived in the storm because she knew visibility was survival. Ellis countered with her own weapon, visibility in interviews. She sat down with bloggers, podcasters, even smaller YouTubers, giving her story in full. She repeated that she was proud she had forced Cardi B to face her, proud she had made her truth public, proud she had shown the world she wasn't afraid of fame. She didn't have an album to drop, but she had a platform now, and she was going to use it. Every interview kept her alive in the conversation. Every quote became a new headline. Every tear became a new meme. She had lost the case, but she was winning in another way, by refusing to disappear. By the end of the month, the clash had become a cycle that refused to die. Cardi B posted her children, Ellis posted her truth. Cardi B dropped snippets of her music, Ellis dropped new interviews. Ron Rosen fueled the fire with promises of appeals, while Cardi B threatened to countersue the next person bold enough to try her. Both sides kept feeding the machine, and the machine kept devouring every piece. It wasn't about who was innocent anymore. It wasn't even about who was guilty. It was about who could control the story, who could make the louder noise, who could weaponize visibility better, and in the end, there was no closure. The courthouse had given its judgment, but the people had not. Cardi B walked away with a legal win, but a public storm that wouldn't let her rest. Ellis walked away with a legal loss, but a growing platform that kept her name alive. Ron Rosen walked away with fury, promising more battles ahead. And the people walked away with their popcorn, waiting for the next twist, knowing deep down that this war was far from over. Because in the clash between fame and defiance, innocence and accusation, loyalty and betrayal, one truth was undeniable. The case may have ended, but the drama was only just beginning.